Hello everybody and welcome to the Draft Blueprint 2.1 overview. I'm Rua Mordecai, your science coordinator here at your cooperative here in the South Atlantic. I'm going to hit on a few of the big improvements in Blueprint 2.1. There's a number more listed on the website itself, but I'm going to narrow in on the improvements in the freshwater aquatic ecosystem, the marine, and within urban areas. Now, one of the things you may have noticed is that we don't have the corridors quite ready yet. One of the things we noticed, so corridors are particularly very sensitive to which hubs are selected. What are you going to connect between? And we noticed a few key hubs missing from one of the previous drafts. That was a problem with one of the landscape indicators. So we fixed that, but we wanted to make sure that we are spending your time as efficiently as possible. So the draft corridors for 2.1 will be out 1 to 2 weeks after the release. All right, so let's dig into some improvements. Big one is within the freshwater aquatic ecosystem. One thing that's helped quite a bit is we now have a data layer depicting the active river area. And now we're talking about the area that's actively influencing the aquatic systems themselves. So not just the actual floodplains and streams, but even to some of the uplands and the sediment contribution areas. This was definitely a big help and something that we didn't have last time. That's helped a lot on a number of our indicators. So a new freshwater aquatic indicator, so improved riparian buffer. We now also apply them just to the active river area. So that really helps quite a bit. Before it was just the entire watershed, and so if you were practically right in the stream channel, that actions there had the same impact as if you were way out into the uplands. So now we're narrowing in on an area most influential. That's helped a lot in some of these indicators, riparian buffers especially. We've also made some other improvements in the indicators, including aquatic diversity hotspots. So it's made quite a bit of difference. I'm going to show you an example of some of these improvements. We'll go to the Roanoke and Tar area out in eastern North Carolina. Zoom in. So in the top right there, we see the Roanoke River. That's that big swath of high priority. So the darker blue is the higher priority. The green is that next class down. So this is Blueprint 2.0. But one of the things that a lot of y'all noticed as we were doing the workshops and looking at draft is that there are a number of these very kind of smaller, isolated, and not even isolated, but smaller rivers and streams that weren't coming out of this blueprint prioritization. And so an example sort of depicts some of those. This is the North Carolina heritage programs. There are significant heritage areas, and you see in the black here, that's an area that wasn't very well captured in Blueprint 2. So a lot of these smaller, important for aquatic pieces we are missing in Blueprint 2.0. Now I'm going to show you Blueprint 2.1, and now you see here we've captured a lot more of those. Now again, it's not 100% overlap and perfect, but a lot of those major areas that we were missing before that were smaller and very important for aquatics, especially aquatic endemics, are now coming out in Blueprint 2.1. So your story is a little more balanced of terrestrial and aquatic. The story of the Piedmont especially becomes a little more aquatic related. Okay, now let's go a little bit upstream to talk about the improvements in urban areas. So we'll talk about give an example in Cary, North Carolina, just west of Raleigh, so a little bit upstream from where we're looking. These are urban priorities and within Cary. So here's just the base map. On the left, you can see your major kind of reservoir and watershed, kind of water supply area. And there are a number of parks dotted throughout this area, some of these green sections other than that country club there. Now let's look at Blueprint 2.0. Weren't really capturing a lot of things that are important within the urban community. We got the fairly big state park, we got some historic areas, some of those smaller flecks you see a priority, but not so much around urban water supply, and a lot of those urban green space really weren't coming out in the last version. Now here's 2.1. So we've captured a lot of those protected open space, and we've captured a lot more of the sort of riparian and aquatic areas important for water supply. So good improvement. One big thing is our improved urban open space index. So now, first off, it only applies to areas near or within urban areas. So we've now snapped it back to just areas that are kind of the census definition of urban areas is with a buffer. And now within that area, we can now put the highest value on already protected open space. So that's how we're able to pull out some of these smaller embedded green spaces. Now heads up, this is mentioned in the known issues. This works fairly well in some areas where the TNC secured areas, which we use for protected lands, captures those areas well, but some places like Georgia and North Carolina, for example, if you look at Atlanta, a lot of those places are not in that protected areas database. So this does not work as well there just yet, but once we update that, get that updated, then that'll work better there as well. Okay, so highest value protected open space, and then this is kind of the interesting twist. This next one is that the next highest is unprotected and undeveloped land near people without good access to open space. So this is more of an equity component here, and so we're now looking for, okay, where's the next best place that will help improve access to folks that don't have good access to protected open space right now. Here's what all those things look like at this point. So again, that sort of darker blue is the highest priority, and that blue-green area a little farther away is now the next highest priority. So what it's doing is it's essentially now looking for places where people don't have good access to protected open space, and then prioritizing that as the next place where you could potentially have some. And so you'll notice a lot more. One other thing you'll notice is this kind of line at the bottom where all of a sudden the base map breeds through. So now we've gotten outside of that sort of buffered urban area. Now, that is the improved urban open space indicator. All right, now on to the marine environment. One big thing that's helped a lot in improving the marine, so those of you that looked at some of the estuarine and marine priorities before, especially the marine, said, wow, that's really got a long way to go. So that's why I've been focusing on improving some of these things. Now we have some really awesome marine mammal habitat models that are pretty exciting, especially they cover the entire Atlantic. They're pulling in a whole bunch of different observational data, building models with oceanographic data, and so we actually get some nice density models that include things like uncertainty and distance sampling, and so that's very exciting. That is really helping refine some of the priorities here. And that was a really nice chance to experiment with some new methods in zonation, which we use as a program for doing the blueprint to account for things like time and uncertainty. So now these new marine mammal models are actually monthly models. So that means we have monthly for most of these species. And so we actually include each season for each species as separate inputs. And what's cool about that is that means that if you have we can account for key kind of choke points in their life history. So it's not just about, you know, kind of the big averaged out right whale model, but it's like, okay, well, what about places that may be important for right whales in January, or sperm whales in December, but not in other months. So we can now pull out those choke points as part of the prioritization. And we've also incorporated the uncertainty estimates of the model. So each of those months and species has uncertainty estimates. So the prioritizations that I'm going to show in a second actually incorporate uncertainty and are more robust to some uncertainty within those density predictions. Yay. And another cool thing is, I think this is our first experimentation into some things that can work for time-ordered decisions under future change. So the first of some potential methodological improvements that we can start looking for things like, improve how we deal with wetland migration corridors, prioritizing restoration, and some of these more sort of long-term time-ordered decisions we make. So that's also cool. Marine mammal priorities. So this is what the priority layer looks like. Dark bluian is the highest priority, red is the lower. And so this is what it looks like with 14 mammal species, 11 with monthly layers. So basically thinking about whales and dolphins primarily here. We do across the full Atlantic, which is very cool. So we can essentially account for things far outside the South Atlantic boundaries in the prioritization. Then we clip it back to just the South Atlantic. And so one of the big things is that in the last blueprint it had very few priorities within the sort of near-shore environment. And so especially bringing in some of the dolphins and right whales and all that, that really helped improve that prioritization quite a bit. So that's helped a lot on the marine mammal side. Now, let's look at the big Blueprint 2.1. Now you can go in, you'll be able to download it and see all the data and metadata layers and explore. But I just want to give you the 30,000 foot view here, Blueprint 2.1. So now we're going back to the classic Blueprint color scheme. So your darkest color being the top 10%. Then that next sort of purpley pink color is going from down to 30%, and then everything that's left over that's in the lighter pink color is sort of top 50%. So back to the same blueprint categories we had before. Again, no corridors yet in this. They'll come out of that pink section there. But now you can see some of the changes, and we'll go through back here. So let's look at Blueprint 2.1, look at 2.0, let's look at 2.1 again. Okay, so one of the couple of big things we have here is that a lot of the big no-brainer areas, sort of the big hubs and corridors, they pretty much stay the same. A lot of the major no-brainer places show up. They get a lot more resolution now. If we're talking about the inland, a lot more is moving to balance between the aquatic and terrestrial priorities. The story of the Piedmont becomes a lot more aquatic. Still important terrestrial indicators and components are captured in there, but a little more snap to the aquatic area, and a little bit less, but still some of that on the coastal plain. The marine environment is improved significantly. Still got the key components along the shelf break, but we've captured a lot of other important places, both near shore and even farther outside, where we had some hard bottom data and others for key productivity areas. So still a long way to go, but that is the current draft for you to take a look at. And I'll do it one more time for you. Here's 2.1, here's 2.0, here's 2.1 again. Timelines. So now I've released the draft version, so comments open to anyone, everyone and everyone. You feel free, you can give me a shout if you want to talk about them a little bit more. We can set up a time for an overview, or if you just want to look at it yourself and submit some comments, you can do that through the draft Blueprint 2.1 website area. And also through that time up to June 1st, we're going to be following up some individuals and groups with some targeted interviews. And then going to be making improvements as they come in, as y'all submit reviews or they come up in discussions. We'll be working on improving them. Anything we can improve up to then will basically become known issues, and we'll work on the next blueprint revision. And May 19th, there'll be a big overview and review during the third Thursday web forum. So that'll be another chance. We'll make it nice and interactive at the end, but it'll be a chance to hear about some of the updates and then discuss some changes. And then last, on June 6th steering committee meeting, that'll be approval of the final version. And in July, we'll be updating our different viewers and things like that by then with all the fresh, shiny new Blueprint 2.0 improvements. So looking forward to hearing